Good. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first lecture series for Pilchuck Glass School, and thank you for being here. I'm Donna Davies, the Executive Director of Pilchuck, and we recognize some faces, and I know we have some new faces, so I thought I would share a little bit about Pilchuck before we turn it over to our esteemed friend Preston. Pilchuck was co-founded in 1971 by Dale Chihuly and John Halberg and Ann Gould Halberg. This is my dog Clark making the rounds, begging for the cheese tax. And our campus is located in Stanwood, Washington, about an hour north of here, on 55 acres, 60 buildings, which includes studio buildings, housing, and a lodge, which is where all of the meals and sort of that sense of community really comes home. The idea behind Pilchuck was is still artists teaching artists from all over the world, and so you have this incredible cross-pollination of ideas from all over the world. And then we also have artists in residence. There are always 2 artists in residence in each session, and sessions run May through September, I should say. It's an icy mess up on campus right now. You would not want to be there. But we always have 2 artists in residence, which Dale's idea was to bring artists whose primary material was not glass, so that there was this introduction of these ideas coming together and glass goes forth. So that's the quick speech about Pilchuck. We are a nonprofit organization. And Preston will be teaching this July, with Martin Janecký. Super excited. Session 4. Yeah. And Preston is also a trustee of Pilchuck, and I looked it up today. You've been on the board since 2001. I was going to look up when you first attended Pilchuck, but you probably remember. But
1984.
Yeah. Fun fact, I've known Preston for a really long time, since the 90s, when I was a graduate student in art history and wrote my master's thesis on contemporary Indigenous art. So I've actually known Preston for a really long time, who I was introduced to you by Tony Pahola, who is sadly no longer with us. But yeah, so it's nice to see Preston's career through all these years.
Yeah.
And so you are here to hear from Preston, not me, so I'm going to quickly turn it over to him. And we're very excited because among his very many collaborations, which I know you'll talk about, is that he is doing this exciting collaboration with the ballet, which opened last weekend, Friday, and goes until this Sunday, right?
That's correct. The final performance is Sunday evening, I guess. Yeah.
Preston did the set design. I highly encourage you to go if you've not gone. Talia, our director of development, and I went to the dress rehearsal, and a modified dress rehearsal, and then Katrina, our board president, who's here, she and I went on Sunday, and it's so magical in so many ways. So I highly encourage you to go for this limited run. But yeah, so I will stop and let you hear from Preston, who's here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I have a robust presentation here. So we'll be here for a while. So get comfortable. No, I've been working since 1982, and so I have to. All of the various things I'm so excited to share with everybody, I have to figure out how to edit it down. And I have, some folks from my focus group here, including my wife, who she loves to, talk about how I present it and what can be done to improve upon it. So, which is always welcome and good. But I do have a story I'm going to read at some point, and I'm just a full disclosure, I'm not a great public reader, but I'm working on it, and I've tried this out, and it seems to be working pretty well in different settings. So anyways, I grew up in Seattle. My family actually comes from, on my mother's side, comes from Alaska. So I'm Tlingit. I'm in the woman in the center is my great grandmother, who was in a prearranged marriage up in Sitka, Alaska, and she had children with that first husband who died in 1919, my great-grandfather. She remarried this man, Dionisio Gubataya, who was a Filipino man, and moved to Seattle in the 20s and brought the first original kids from the first marriage, and including my grandmother. So I am full-blooded, she was full-blooded Tlingit, my grandmother. And my mother, my grandmother married a Filipino man as well. And so technically I'm a Tlinkapino, which is a special breed in Alaska. There's a lot of Filipinos in Alaska. I moved there for the fishing and the cannery industry and what have you. So so from that point forward, my mother then married a mixed European man. So I've got a lot of confluence of culture in me, the Tlingit, the Filipino, and lots of European lineage. We come from the Kagwantan house group. We come from the box house in Sitka, or the eagle moiety, the killer whale clan. We have the brown bear and the wolf also in our lineage. And so that's what represents our family. This is a picture of me when I had, many years ago, when I had dark hair. And my son was not that small. He's 24 now. But it was a great photo of me in some of my traditional regalia, the things that represent our clan, our tribe, our family in Alaska. This is my wife, who's actually right here. So, of course, never a dull moment here. We've been married for 30 years coming up. And she's been working with Nordstrom for 30 years and is about ready to depart to, get back to the glass work, which is very cool and exciting for both of us to consider. That's how we met through glass in Sweden in 1993. We have 2 kids, and we have a flying dog. And this is the guy that got me involved with glass blowing. If you don't know who this is Dante Marioni. He was what I didn't realize, but he was actually grooming me to become his assistant. He found a job for me at age 19 to work at the Glass Eye Studios, and he thought I too could find happiness as a glass blower, and it ended up being pretty true. An incredible opportunity that was fostered by Mount St. Helens, which erupted in 1980 and then was turned, the ash from the volcano was melted into glass by this factory, and the factory gained a lot of, it was very popular and successful, and the growth was happening, and that's how I got included in the factory. So when they sold the factory, I always kind of joke that there was a furnace in the glory hole and all the workbenches in me. So I kind of came, not exactly, but I came over to the studio about 6 months after it moved, when Benjamin took over the old Glass Eye Studios. And so this was the team that I worked with. My teachers, Benjamin Moore, Richard Royal, Dan Daly was the first instructor I ever took a class from at Pilchuck. So he was also quite a very, very impactful person to me and in his artistic approach. So that was really the coming together. Benjamin was the artistic director of Pilchuck. He invited the Italians over. I befriended Lino Tagliapietra early on, and he worked both in Benjamin's studio and over at the El Chihuli's, and so we would often conjoin the teams. And so at that time, Benjamin was kind of like the interpreter of for Lino. So that was interesting. I mean, today he doesn't need an interpreter, but at the time it was helpful for Benjamin to sort of kind of talk us through what Lino needed and how to set everything up. Some of the earliest work that I did was more reflective of the kinds of the people that I was working around. That particular group was inspired by my time in Sweden when I lived there for 6 months. This is kind of like more the modernist era in Italian influence. I call these the Prestonuzzi series, inspired by Napoleon Martinuzzi. These were the earliest pieces that I did when I was learning how to handle the material and blow glass forms and try to make my own work. I call these scribble vases. So because I worked around people who made classical forms, that was my biggest influence at the time. Now, I didn't go to school for art. I didn't go to, you know, any higher education around, beyond high school. I thought I was going to make it as a musician, and ended up falling back on my artwork, on my glass work. Glass blowing was like a really cool day job, and then at night I'd go practice with my friends, thinking like we're gonna change the world with our music, and anyway, that was a kind of it was a duality there that was always happening. But now when I'm showing this, I've since gotten very interested in psychology, in mythology, Joseph Campbell's perspective of like this heroic monomyth, and so these are in a way I'm kind of summing it up. This is my own sort of heroic monomyth. I mean, this was the threshold of adventure. Going up to Pilchuck was an incredible time to meet people from all around the world, and I traveled all around the world. I was able to, get these invitations to go to different places. But in 2000, well, before this is when we put this the founders totem pole together. This was a point when my career was really blossoming, and it started really in 1988 when I met David Svensson, who saw me drawing these designs out and transferring them onto the glass, and he asked me my interest in this Northwest Coast art, and I said, well, it's part of my family background. And he says, you should really follow this path. And he showed me his portfolio, his photos he had made, masks and totem poles, and had been traveling up to Haines, Alaska for the summers for 20 years. And so he invited me up there. I did kind of take him very seriously, and he became a bit of a teacher and a mentor to me as well. He was trained by Tlingit carvers. He was kind of given that that knowledge and that skill and that training. The year before, in 2000, was the first year I met Joe David, who was also a very important mentor to me. I was his artist assistant, helping him learning about glass. He was really interested in creating a sweat lodge on the campus, so it really opened up my eyes to Native spirituality, and he actually bestowed a name upon me at the end of the session in the 2000. And that was quite an honor, which in the old days was a thing that would happen, sort of mark a change within your life, a growth or whatever, or you would take over some sort of responsibility of a house leader, perhaps, or whatever. But so I carry this name, Kakawan Chief, from Joe David, and that was something that was really transformative to me. We made this totem pole for the school, and it was like being up on the campus, working with the Tlingit carvers, having Native American students in the class helping us execute the totem pole. We carved it mostly up in Alaska. I didn't carve it. I shouldn't say I didn't do any of the carving. I'm not a carver. But they carved it and brought it down to the campus, and we finished it up as a class. And so we made all these elements. We cast glass that was going to be inlaid into the pole and then backlit with neon. And this is Clarissa Rizal there on the right, or on the left. She was also a really instrumental teacher and mentor to me. This is our class, celebrating the totem pole. That illustrates the founders of the school. It was Dale Chihuly, Annie Halberg, and John Halberg. And because John Halberg was the heir to Weyerhaeuser, and so it seemed befitting to make a cedar pole, a monument to John Halberg. Annie was like a amazing arts patron in Seattle, and so she was also instrumental. Of course, Dale Chihuly brought the whole idea. Like Raven brought the light to the world, Dale Chihuly brought Pilchuck to the world. Okay, so we had this lateral interpretation of what this symbolism behind this, and this is what I'm really getting into, is the whole metaphor of symbolism and everything around the work that I'm doing. Traveling to Japan. I first went there in like 1999, and I was looking at how the Japanese had sort of a bit of an Asian style to their glass making, and I was convinced that could really be a native style if I were to help push it along, me and others. A lot of so the indigenous artist gatherings were also another key component to my growth and understanding of how Native people, indigenous people from around the world, interpret their culture for today's commercial market. So that's a very specific thing. There's cultural art, there's commercial art, and so they serve different purposes. This is on the big island of Hawaii. Went to New Zealand and worked with the Maori people there. I mean, they were just incredibly empowered people that just, were super inspiring. I mean, they kind of got people that would just give you the shirt off their back, but they were just really progressive and educated and navigating into government and have Maori language TV stations. So working with the Maori was really amazing. Sometimes I get to blow glass in these places when we go to these gatherings. So these are some Maori-inspired sculptures. This was a cultural arts exchange I went on in Australia. And then there's the Czech connection. So being in Czech, I started going there about 10 years ago through the introduction of Charlie Perriott, who's a long-time Pilchuck affiliate as well. So here Dante and I are, we're philosophizing here, swilosophizing over Czech beer. This is Thomas Flanderica, who's been instrumental in helping me achieve some of these cast totem poles over there. These are really super, I mean, they just are amazing pieces. It's kind of a hobby of mine, I guess. I make these things, and I do show them, and some people buy them. Anyways, these are smaller pieces. The largest ones that I've done are quite monumental. This is about 2,800 pounds of glass. Actually, you can see the sections there in the castings, the way the light's raking on it. But so this is Martin Janecký, an amazing Czech glass blower who I befriended at Pilchuck years ago, maybe 15 or so years ago, or long. I can't even remember. He's got a beautiful studio in Prague, which is the only hot glass studio in the city of Prague. They have an old glass culture. They make the lead crystal that I work with to cast those totem forms. So we had the idea of working together just because we really enjoy each other's company. He invited me over. He just opened up. He opened up his studio, and then COVID hit, and so he hasn't had a lot of visitors. And so I said, "I'll come over, sure. Yeah, let's do it." So this is a rare photo of me actually lifting the pipe. When I'm working over there, he doesn't let me do anything. It's just like, just because. Anyway, he he's got his assistant here, John Brown. So, and that's usually my position there, just sort of standing or watching Martin work. So this is Peter West, who's actually taken it upon himself to do a documentary about the process, about this cross-continental collaboration that brings us all together. Pilchuck brings us all together. The glass material brings us all together. We have a really great time, hanging out, working together. Martin, said, "Well, I don't know what I would make here. If I make a face, it's going to look like some old Czech guy." And I said, "Well, let's look at some Native American faces. Let's look at and see if that kind of pushes you in a different direction." So we started adding, the Northwest Coast masks have all these incredible, compositions and appendages, coming off them. So this is a killer whale mask. This is one of the pieces that we made, which was inspired by Princess Angeline. Unfortunately, that piece broke, so we remade her, and this is kind of where we're at. And then I will adorn them in some fashion or another, maybe facial markings, some tattoo designs, or what have you. So that's kind of on the horizon. This is Walter Porter, who I learned a lot about. He considered himself a mythologist. He was Tlingit from the village of Yakutat. He taught me a lot about the symbolism behind the stories, and he encouraged me to take his teachings and spread them as far and wide as I could. I talked to him about this exhibition that I wanted to create called Raven in the Box of Daylight, and he said that was, one of his major life studies. And unfortunately, before we were able to work on this together, he passed away. So I had to sort of carry on with the work, and I found another curator, Miranda Bellardi Lewis, and she helped me put this exhibition together. This basically takes you through the whole story. I'm not going to get into this particular story because I'm going to try to read this other one. This is basically how Raven, he stole the light from this old man who was hoarding it in his clan house, and he placed it in the sky, and so that's how we got the daylight. And there's a lot into it, and that's why I say there's so many things that I could wax on poetically on about, around all of these things and all of this knowledge. I get kind of excited that I want to share a lot with everybody. So anyway, now Raven's inside the clan house. He spies these boxes. He one by one, he takes the stars and then the moon and then the sun, places in the sky, breaks daylight on the world, and with the flash of light, the people become scared. They scatter into the water. They jump into the sky and they run off into the forest, and they become the animals of those regions. And so the Tlingit people have an affinity with those animals and have adopted them for the clan symbols. So this actually is a story that was written by Garth Stein. And I'd like to ask you to indulge me a little bit in, Walter always talked about the whole idea of imaging. I'm providing images here for you, but the thing is that uh, we've lost that ability to create images in our head because we're inundated with our phones and things that we swiping and looking and flipping through our phones and showing images to everybody. Oh, look at this photo I took and this and that. So this story is supposed to invoke certain kinds of a setting, and if I didn't provide the visuals, it would be a totally different kind of story. But let's give it a whirl, and we're going to see how it goes. And if you decide I'm talking too long, you're welcome to leave or fall asleep, take a nap. In a potlatch situation, we would be here for several hours. In the Western context, you're saying, 45 minutes to an hour. It's like, so we're going to try this. I won't be offended. So this is the idea here. So he went to sleep, Raven did. For a long time, he slept. He had dreams. They were good dreams. Raven was the best dreamer of them all. He dreamed of the sky, which was clear and endless. He dreamed of the waters, which were clean and cold. He dreamed of the world as it was before he went to sleep, as it was before it turned on itself with contempt and tore itself apart. He dreamed of the before world, which was immaculate and true as the high breeze that holds the eagles in the sky. The before world with its magnificent salmon, bellies ripe bursting with roe, hurling themselves upriver to spawn. The before world with music and people, happy, contented people, satisfied with their abundance, grateful, generous, humble people. Raven dreamed. Raven woke up then. He woke up in his dream. He was awake and not awake at the same time, which is what Raven can do. He looked around and was surprised to find himself surrounded by tall buildings. He was in a city of pavement and steel. Thought Raven. When did all this happen? He rubbed the sleep out of his eyes, or maybe it was pitch that was in his eyes. Because he looked again, he saw villages as they used to be, with long houses and trees. Ah, he thought, there's no place like home. And then he blinked again, and the buildings were back. Gah! Raven cried and flew straight up into the air. We know what Raven knows. The dream world and the waking world are not so far apart. And sometimes Raven can be in one world and unintentionally step into another world, and then there can be real trouble. The rules of the dream world follow Raven into the waking world, and then that's no good because Raven makes all kinds of mischief when he brings the dream world with him. Raven likes his mischief. Now, Raven wasn't ready to fix the world just yet. Raven was still hungry, and he gazed into the lake to see if he could see any fish to eat. He saw a reflection of himself and was very surprised to see himself looking as he did. You see, Raven's true color is silver, not black, as people have come to know him. He blackens his feathers so he can hide in the night, so nobody can see him. When Raven is his true color, silver, he reflects all the light, like a mirror ball in a discotheque. Raven had been sleeping so long he had molted and regrown a full coat of feathers. His new feathers were silver and beaming light all over the world, and everybody laughed at Raven as he danced around like a glittering gem in the sun. Raven was not pleased. He thought he looked like Elvis in the Las Vegas days. He hopped down to the beach where people lit bonfires every night. He rolled in the charcoal left behind by the fires, and it didn't take long for Raven to blacken his feathers again. When he stopped sparkling like a star on a string, the people lost interest. They stopped pointing and laughing, and they went about their business and left Raven alone, which is how Raven liked it, except when he was hungry, which was nearly always. Raven didn't want to go into battle without an ally, so he visited the Kushtaka, the Land Otter people. The Land Otter people were very powerful. In the beginning, when Raven named the birds and animals of the forest and the underwater world and gave them their assignments, he gave the Land Otters the ability to change to human form. With this power came a responsibility. The Kushtaka were charged with watching over the waters and the forests for those who were lost and near death from exposure or drowning. The Kushtaka saves these lost souls and adopts them into their clan. Raven went to the Kushtaka, who live at the point where the breeze blows from either side. The raven feasted them, and so they would join him in the united front to get against those who make heat waves in the ocean, fierce and powerful and unseen enemies. Raven warned the Kushtaka that demanded all the attention of all. Those land otters, they called their other animal spirits, and the others came, because the Kushtaka was neither friend nor foe, and that's why they came when the Kushtaka called, because there was no guile in the Kushtaka call. Raven went to find Petrel, who was an old man who lived in himself by the woods, and therefore must be considered both fascinating and suspicious at the same time, or as the young people say, creepy. Petrel always has a treasure or two that can come in handy, Raven thought to himself. But when he found Petrel by his hut, Raven was surprised to find Petrel guarding his home furiously with a large stick. "Stay away, Raven," Petrel warned, swinging his stick. "There's nothing for you here." Well, it is well known among the Tlingit that when something says nothing is there, usually something is there. And when the something that is there is disguised as nothing, usually that nothing that is something is a something of value, otherwise known as something that is something. So Raven knew by Petrel's insistence to the contrary that whatever Petrel didn't have was certainly something worth not having, or in this case, something worth having. "I have not come for anything but your companionship," Raven said. He thought, "Why tell the truth when I can tell you a perfectly good lie? Verily, I am weary and sad that the world has fallen into such a sorry state while I slept." Upon hearing Raven's unseemingly sincere plea, Petrel put down his stick and offered Raven a cup of water, which Raven drank greedily. "Ah," Raven exclaimed ravenously, "your water is so sweet, so cold, so clean. I have not tasted such delicious water since the time before, since the old stories." "It's true," Petrel preened. "My water is the sweetest and the best." "Where did you get this water?" Raven asked. "Surely I would like to taste it from its very source, as that water must be some of the most exquisite water on earth." At this, Petrel retrieved his stick and swung it at Raven. "Never!" he cried. "Hagra!" "Relax, old man," Raven said, dodging the blow. Keep your spring a secret as long as you give me another cup of that delicious water." So as Raven drank, and Petrel told him that this was the last source of the purest water on earth, and if people learned of its source, they would desecrate it. "I agree, old man," Raven cawed. "The only thing that man has contributed to our earth is his foul stink and his excrement, and funky music played by white boys." Raven told Petrel of his adventures in the waking world and how the water everywhere had been turned bad with chemicals and microplastics, and all the living things on earth were feeding their bodies and their souls with tainted water, and it was becoming part of them, and soon people's bodies would freeze solid because of the chemicals and the microplastics. Petrel laughed so hard at the idea of people freezing solid like plastic, like little toy soldiers frozen in mid-stride. He laughed so hard he farted. He laughed so hard that he cried. Raven cried too then. He fell to his hands and knees and cried tears of joy, tears of pain, tears of elation, tears of despair. And the tears rolled down his face and splashed on the ground, where they gathered with Petrel's tears and made a stream. And that stream ran into the river and purified the water so it was clean again. The river ran into the ocean and purified that water as well. And the lakes and the rivers that mixed with the oceans of the waking world were made pure by Raven's tears and the tears of Petrel. The water was made clean by the anguish and the ecstasy of the spirits. When it came time for sleep, Petrel made a bed out of moss in one corner of his hut. "You sleep here, Raven," said Petrel, "and no tomfoolery." "I don't know tomfoolery, but I hereby banish him from any future conflagrations," said Raven. And so they slept. Now, before Raven fell into his REM sleep, he had many thoughts, and one of those thoughts concerned one of Petrel's hats, which sat on the ground opposite Raven, mocking Raven. And if you say that a hat cannot mock someone, you're a tomfool. This hat was a mocking hat, for it was Petrel's fog hat, which Petrel often used to torment Raven. He used it once to follow Raven for days on end, trapping him in a dense fog. And when you're in a dense fog, you see nothing but yourself, you hear nothing but your own breathing and your own thoughts, and people cannot see you. You're invisible inside your fog, and it's very bad for spiritual growth, which is dependent upon the kindness of others. Well now, thought Raven, pretending to sleep, that's something to be had, but how? Raven had fooled Petrel when he stole the water, which he immediately gave to the people so they would stop whining about being thirsty all the time. That was a good one. He used the old dog poop, your poop switcheroo, which might work again. George W. Bush famously said, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again." An actual mockery of a travesty of a cliche. Yet Petrel voted for George W. So Raven left the hut in the dark of the night. He found a mound of ripe dog poop near where the dog slept. He smeared the dog poop on Petrel's behind while Petrel slept, and in the morning, as the sun was also rising, Petrel awakened to an awful smell. "Old man, your immense fart last evening was the calm before the storm," cried Raven. "The storm has landed. You have soiled yourself in the night." Petrel saw that he had indeed soiled himself in the night. He leapt from his bed and ran to the water to wash off the excrement. He was washing himself. Raven took the fog hat and he put it on his head and he flew away. "One day, Raven," he heard Petrel shout as he flew away. "One day, Raven, to the moon." Raven always said, "Petrel shakes a mean fist, but his sting is like a butterfly's kiss." Now, Raven still didn't know where he was going, but he had the tongue of a Yeti to give him power, and he had Petrel's fog hat. So he walked down to the road and into the woods, around the mountain that overlooks the river, and back around the other side where the roads come together until he reached a great meadow of lushness and growth with grasses and wildflowers, butterflies and bees. Raven marveled at the wonder of the meadow and the large broken building which stood by. "What is that building?" Raven asked aloud, and a flicker nearby answered him, because flickers see everything, and they love to talk and talk and talk. "That's the Institute," the little bird said. "What does it do?" "Nothing for a long time," Flicker said. "But before, not long enough ago, some say, it was a place to send the Indian kids to make them white. Kill the Indian, save the man, they said. And if the man can't be said, the saying went, or so they say, then kill the Indian and the man in him too, they say. For no man needs a man who is an Indian." "You're a cipher, little bird," Raven said. "Say what you mean, or I will eat you for lunch, for I am powerfully hungry." They took the children from the families, Flicker chirped. They forbade the children to speak their native tongues or practice their native beliefs or grow their native hair. "There is great power in native hair." "Oh, I know that," Raven said vociferously. "They broke open those children, you see," said Flicker. "They emptied their minds, their souls, and built them back as white people. And those who couldn't build back, they murdered and buried here in this field." Raven looked around him. "I don't see any graves." "They left the graves unmarked," Flicker said somberly, "because they thought no one would see. But we see, Raven. Those of us who live here, who were born here and raised here, we see the souls buried underneath this meadow, the souls that haunt us. We see, we see." Raven felt them then, the souls. He felt them grabbing for him, children crying, weeping, calling out to him, trying to grasp his talons, his wings. Raven felt the mournful souls grabbing him, pulling him down. He suddenly flew up in the air over the meadow. "My children," he said, "I am overcome with the sorrow for your condition. I will be swallowed by it. Let me go now and avenge you. Meanwhile, I will leave you with this." Raven took the fog hat from beneath his wing and held it before him. In his other hand, he held the tongue of the Yeti spirit. And the magic known only to Raven, he imbued it with a haze of sorrow, and he buried that hat in the garden next to the Institute, where it would take root and grow with somber intensity. "When people walk by your meadow, they will know," said Raven. "They will feel the sorrow of 1,000 lost souls bearing down on them. They will fall to their knees and weep in despair." Raven was too sad to stay any longer as he flew away. He saw an eagle circling majestically over the meadow where the native children were buried in their unmarked graves. Raven eagle alit atop a Sitka spruce tree. "Now what have you, Raven? What makes you so sad?" asked Eagle. "You act as if your children were taken from you, mistreated, abused, murdered, and left with nothing to be without being mourned." "You're of one of great perspicacity," replied Raven, joining Eagle in the tree, and told the eagle of the children's soul in the meadow below. Eagle listened to Raven's story while betraying no emotion, for eagles are famous for betraying no emotion, even in times of great stress. Eagle listened, and when Raven finished, Eagle spoke. "I will build an aviary here. In this spot," Eagle said. "I'll raise my children here, and they will raise their children here for many generations to come. We'll watch over this meadow. We'll watch over the souls of the children buried here. We will not allow them to be forgotten." Eagle stood proudly and raised his wings as if to embrace the world. Raven felt comforted by Eagle's embrace and wished that the children would be comforted as well. Raven went home then. He retrieved his most powerful fighting hat, placed it on his head, for he was ready to do battle with any demon necessary. His fighting hat was in the form of an eagle, which made Raven look fierce and powerful and tough. When Raven left his hut, and with his eagle fighting hat on, the young children who saw him were so frightened they hid behind their mother's skirts. Dogs cowered and whined. The bravest of men wavered in their stride. Raven was a fearsome fighter. "I will call for my spirit helpers," Raven proclaimed. He built himself a sweat lodge using branches and limbs. When the lodge was finished, the people built a fire and heated the stones. And when the hot stones were ready, Raven went inside. He sat in the smoke and the intense heat of the sweat lodge for hours. The stones grew cold. They were replaced by hot ones by the Raven's people. He sat in the sweat lodge for days. As he was nearing unconsciousness, Raven had visions of lights. Blue lights danced all around him. These lights were the spirits of the ancestors who had come to give Raven guidance. The blue light spirits danced before Raven and told him things he should know. And Raven called on his animal spirits, his friends, and they came to him. They gathered, they imbued him with their power, and Raven ascended and ascended until he was everything around us, and he became all things. And for his love for all things exuded from his whole spirit. In the sweat lodge, the stones were cold. People looked inside. Raven was not there. He had vanished into another dimension, because when the dream world and the waking world mix, things like that happen. It's like this when Raven sleeps sometimes. Sometimes a dream strikes him on the head like a canoe strikes a rock in a river. However, while the rock in the river remains unmoved, Raven is perturbed. It is told in the old stories that a killer whale often comes ashore and makes use of the land when no one is watching. The old stories tell of killer whales building fires and camping on the beach. It was not uncommon in the old stories to see an abandoned beach fire, and upon looking out to sea, notice a pod of killer whales swimming away because they're very shy. So Raven was not surprised when he stumbled onto the freshly abandoned fire on the beach and saw a black canoe heading towards shore. Further, he was not surprised when he saw that black canoe revealed itself as a killer whale who stepped out of the surf and approached him. "Alas, my friend, you've come to see me in my domain. You must have something important. You must have a problem." "I'm here to broker a truce," said Killer Whale. "A truce between who and whom?" replied Raven. "Why, between you and us, Raven," Killer Whale said. "We give up. Please stop your assault. We beg you. We set the terms of your treaty. Tell us your demands, and we'll capitulate entirely." Raven was astonished. "But friend, I don't know of which you speak," said Raven. "When have I ever assaulted you?" "Your attack has been prolonged and vicious," said Killer Whale, adding, "and strategic and overwhelming. We are under constant attack from your evil troops. My people are afraid of you," Killer Whale said. "We can't live with what you've done to our ocean. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is but one example. The assault is on so many fronts. Microplastics, heavy metals, warming trends. Truly, we have seen the desecration of our habitat." "That's as bad as it gets," said Raven. "And can we talk about how you and your people are destroying the salmon, our main source of food?" "Me," said Raven. "That isn't me. People are doing that." "Yes, your people are the heinous troops you employ against us." "They're not my people. I hardly know them. I have very little to do with them." But you look like them. Sometimes I look like them. It's true, said Raven. It's true that I'm half person on my mother's side, but that doesn't mean I'm a chronic environmental abuser. If you're not helping, you're hurting, Killer Whale said. Is that true, wondered Raven. Do we live in such a world? Have we become so binary that if we're not actively helping, we are hurting? Either all the thinking or the bump from the canoe made Raven's head hurt. Raven stood in a kelp forest beneath the waves. He swayed with the tangle of the syrupy brown kelp trees that grew up around him, and their tentacle-like arms reaching upward toward the light, and their floppy dog-tongued appendages drifting in the current. And there, keeping them buoyant and erect, the kelp bulbs. Raven used a saw made of teeth to cut into one of the kelp bulbs and discovered a ladder inside that led down to the bottom of the ocean. Raven climbed down that ladder and found a killer whale on the ocean floor. A killer whale village on the ocean floor. It looked like a human village with long houses and huts and killer whales swimming around like people strolling. Raven went inside the long house and saw there was a killer whale who was entirely white, an albino killer whale. All Tlingit know that white specimen of any animal is one that has supernatural power. Raven, supernatural killer whale said, what brings you to the bottom of the ocean? As you know, Raven began, one of your people came to me. One of you killer whales are quite upset about the state of the ocean, as well you should be. I'm aware, supernatural killer whale said. Yes, Raven continued. Upon further reflection, I've decided that your problems lie outside of my purview. You see, I think you have a false idea of me and my powers I may or may not have. You should think of me more as a first mover. I start the ball rolling on things, and those balls roll wherever they wish. And should those balls roll over things and break them or crush them flat, well, the balls are no longer in my control. And so, therefore, ipso facto, I bear no responsibility, and therefore cannot be expected to fix those things that have been smashed flat and or broken. I just want to state for the record that when I say balls, you can substitute people or humans. Raven, supernatural killer whale said, you're the yin to my yang, the up to my down, the hot to my cold. You're the other side of my coin. You're the man in my mirror, the me who is not me. I have no idea what you're saying, said Raven. We are separate, but we're the same, said supernatural killer whale. What you do to me, you are doing to you. But I'm not doing anything to you or me, cried Raven. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's the people. And you created the people, supernatural killer whale retorted. They are their own actors, protested Raven. I gave them free will. A hunter gives a harpoon free will when he throws it, yet the intention is set by the hunter, not by the harpoon. Oi, exclaimed Raven, you're one tough customer. Keep searching, Raven, said supernatural killer whale. You will get there. The people had seen Raven then. When he returned to the upper world, he was in the ocean far from land. People were in a canoe, and they said, Oh, Raven, we've been calling for you. Raven said to the people, I am hungry. I cannot listen when I'm hungry. Feed me. But the people did not offer their food, for there was no food to offer. We have not caught a single salmon this entire day, they cried. So how is this so? Asked Raven. Our salmon runs are dwindling. Even the killer whales are complaining, the people said. Oh my, cried Raven. It's worse, wailed the people, tearing at their hair. Now salmon are raised from farms and genetically modified, pale and sickly. Our fruit is sprayed with chemicals so that it will never decay, yet the fruit has lost its flavor. And the snow crabs. The white man says there's a heat wave in the ocean, which is only something the white man can say. For surely there was no oceanic heat waves before the white man came. And all the crabs are dead. Raven wept for his people. He loved his people. He made them out of leaves. He could have made them out of stone and the people would have lived forever. But Raven chose to make the people out of leaves so they would be born, live and die, and return to the earth and be born again. Raven loved all his people, even those who make heat waves in the bottom of the ocean, though he wished that it was a problem he needn't have to worry about. Now Raven knew of a great shaman who could teach Raven many things about the world, and perhaps would give him a solution to the problem before him. So he ventured off into the woods, eventually arriving at a small hut with the smoke trailing from the smoke hole. Raven knocked and opened up the door and stepped inside. The air was warm and thick. By the light of the fire, he could see a shaman dressed in his shaman's garb, with a shirt of cedar bark, a tattered smock of deer hides, a crown of bear claws holding a rattle. He was dancing, this shaman. And Raven wondered if the word had already spread about his new invention called dancing, or if he had unknowingly tapped into something universal, or if he was in a time warp. On his face, the shaman wore a trance mask, further upsetting Raven, who regretted not taking quick action on trademarking the whole exploit of the dancing thing. Dance halls, discotheques, marathons. Raven never trusted a masked man, as the masks conceal the facial expressions and therefore limit nonverbal communication, which is how meaning and nuance are conveyed. The masked shaman danced closer to Raven, and Raven could see life in the shaman's eyeballs as he played, but nowhere else. And Raven was frightened. The shaman removed the trance mask and placed it on Raven's face, and Raven fell under the power of the mask. Shamanic magic is nothing to be trifled with. It is well known that the uninitiated, when attempting to harness the power of the spirits, is often driven mad or worse. The shaman handed Raven a soul catcher, a powerful amulet used to extract the sickness out of an individual. Thusly, thrust into a shamanic state, thrust into a trance not of his own making, Raven began to dance. Dance, blackbird Raven, the shaman commanded. Dance. Raven felt dazed and a little confused, which he had grown to accept as his new resting state, dazed and confused. For there are answers and there are questions and there are solutions and there are problems. And very often these separate things do not sort neatly into piles, and one is forced to improvise. Raven sat by a small lake whose waters were so clear and still he could see straight to the bottom. He gazed into the water and he heard the spooky laugh of a loon as it sailed by. "I am no danger to you, loon," said Raven, because he knew that the loon giggle betrayed loon nerves. Upon hearing this, Loon changed his call to a cheerful yodel and sailed up to Raven. "Friend Raven," Loon hooted, "I see it is you. No need to fear me, friend Raven, for I am not a clam." Loon laughed at his own joke until his wavering call bounced off the nearby mountains. "You didn't get that?" Loon asked, noting Raven's daze and confusion. "Because you love to eat clams." "I got it," said Raven. "And yet you're not," said Loon, laughing, "which is fine. I can tell you have a lot on your mind. Things around here have been very curious and exciting. I'm going to tell you all about it, which will lift the darkness from your shoulders. Do you like my necklace?" Here, Loon swam little circles to express some of his excitement. "It's new, and we all have them now. All of us have pretty necklaces. What do you think?" Loon preened. Raven looked. "Lovely," said Raven. "Ah, yes, Raven is dark," said Loon. "The darkness is upon Raven, and his sarcasm is bitter. I'll tell you how I got it anyway. You know that shaman over there. I think you know him." "I know him," said Raven. "You saw him. After you saw him, you began to see things a little differently, did you not?" asked Loon. "It's true, pretty bird," said Raven. "And now I must warn you that your mention of clams for lunch has hit home with me, and I'm powerfully hungry, so I also happen to have a good recipe for squab under glass. Substitution allowed." Loon gulped. "It's bad luck to eat the entertainment," wailed Loon. "That shaman over there was blind when I met him, blind as a bat, blind as a tree." "Indeed?" questioned Raven. It's true," confirmed Loon. "I took him for a ride on the lake. He climbed on my back, and I took him for a sail. And when I saw a fish in the clear water, I was feeling a little hungry, a feeling you know so well. So I decided to catch that fish. I told the shaman to hold on, and I dove." "An anchovy?" asked Raven. "A sardine? Was it packed in oil?" I didn't catch the fish at first, continued Loon. It was harder to dive with a shaman on your back, harder than you think. And I got a little fixated on that fish, and I think you know what I speak, friend, Raven. When I dove for that fish, it took me several tries to catch him, yet each time I breached, I heard that old man cackle with glee and cry out, I can see, I can see. He could see, said Raven. He could. 7 times I dove, 7 times his eyes were washed. After the 7th washing, the shaman could see clear as day. He was so happy he gave me this necklace. Isn't it pretty? And not just me, he gave all of us these necklaces. Every loon gets one, he said. They're very pretty. Don't you think they're pretty? Bananas, said Raven. Bananas, bananas, you think I'm bananas? Loon wailed and giggled and wavered at the end of his call. Bananas, he can see that, shaman. He could not see. And you call me bananas? Not you, said Raven, trying to placate the agitated bird. The world is bananas. I'm saying the world is sure a bananas place. The world is bananas, repeated Loon with his bananas laugh. Raven could see Loon was working himself into a state. The world is bananas, Loon repeated over and over. He swam in a circle and then took flight, calling to the others, to the mountains, to the world, that the world had gone bananas. You can always tell a loon, said Raven, as he watched Loon fly for the hills, but you can't tell him much. Raven was tired and hungry. He began his long journey home where he could rest and reflect on his impressions of the last few days, his thoughts blowing around inside his head like fall leaves. He passed by the marsh and saw a gray heron standing among the reeds, looking so tall and calm and regal. Good afternoon, gray heron, said Raven. I see you're having a fine day. The key to a fine day, began Raven, whose voice was as languid as his frame, is not to expect more from the day than it has to offer. Interesting, said Raven, and maybe even true. It is true, said Heron. But is it transferable, Raven asked. The key to a fine wine is not to expect more from the wine than it has to offer. Yes, that does transfer well, doesn't it? The key to a fine life is not to expect more from the life than it has to offer. Again, flawless, watertight. It's true, said Heron. You're a true philosopher, and you will take your place on the Mount Rushmore of philosophy, said Raven. How is it that you can remain so calm while the world is going bananas around you? I stand here on my own legs and feet. I don't need a crutch or a pillar to lean against. As long as I can stand on my feet, I am fine. You're a lucky fellow indeed, exclaimed Raven, and patient. You shall be my lucky charm. It is true, said Heron. It is true. Raven walked into a bar carrying a thunderbird egg. To be continued. So it is not likely that you will ever meet Raven, though he has met you. And when you sleep, you dream. And those dreams prevent you from venturing into Raven's realm. But one day you might sample a fish, roast with bear fat, or even with raven fat. And part of you that lives deeper than a dream may remember the story, and you may be confused by your feeling of uncertainty that we are not separate and distinct individuals, but we are all things. We're all connected through mycelium of our souls, like a mushroom or human form. Our human form is merely the fruit and of the vast invisible web of spirituality that is our existence. And so when Raven takes flight, he flies for all of us. When Raven learns, he learns for us all. We only have to listen to the wind and listen to the rain to hear him calling us, hoping that we will join him. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for indulging me there. Those are written by Garth Stein, who's also a Tlingit writer, novelist, acclaimed novelist. And so I gave him the thread of the story, and he kind of wove the whole story. and I've tried edited versions of that, but all the little in between parts, they get lost, and it's not as funny. So on to the next thing here, the Sleeping Beauty, which will play tomorrow. This was through the invitation of Peter Boll, the artistic director of the Northwest Ballet, and he asked me would I be interested in designing for the ballet if I'd ever done set design, and I said no, but sure, I'll do it. Not knowing what I was really getting into, and so this came up about 2.5 years ago. We started talking about it, and his interest was to take it outside of an old European setting and give it something, give it a new look. And so I was, definitely inspired by the Northwest, the nature and the habitat of the Northwest. I'm thinking about eagles and ravens. So I did my experiment or my exercise with mythologies, comparative mythologies, and I drew parallels from this old European tale. It's funny. The first question that I get from anybody who wants to interview me about this is, well, what does the ballet have to do with native culture? I mean, I had just kind of like I have to go back and start from square one and say, are you? Is it okay that I do this? Is this? Are you giving me permission? When I looked, started to research how many Native Americans or Alaska Natives had done set design for ballet, I couldn't find any. So, this was an opportunity, and I was more than interested in taking it on because of my interest in performing arts as a musician and what have you. So these are some shots from the opening night. These are, uh, I mean, Sleeping Beauty. There's one family member, an aunt, who's not invited. She gets bent out of shape, and then she casts the spell upon Aurora, who is being christened, baptized. And so here it is. This is Caraboss. She comes in sort of like the counterpart to the eagle. So she's uh, personified as a raven, and it's the bringer of change. In some cultures it's foretelling of death. Um, so I was looking at all of the metaphors behind all of these symbols and trying to strike this balance and also inform the set. So we went through a series of brainstorming sessions, and then I worked really closely with Charlene Hall, who helped me flesh out the whole, all of the scrim, the watercolors, and so I had a couple of key um, elements that were made for as props, and then Paul Taswell is an amazing costume designer who is now an Academy Award nominee for Wicked, and so this for me was I saw it for the first time in its entirety on Friday night, and it was a little bit surreal. I mean, to see it all come together, but it was so it was such an honor to work with this group of people and to have this all come together. So I'm just giving you uh, some little highlights and great photos from different parts of the set. This will continue in perpetuity. Oh well, I don't know. They'll keep it and bring it out in a couple of years, and um, they'll have another run and maybe tour. We don't know. It's a possibility. So a lot of these. So after the princess is awakened and they get married and all of these characters come out. They've got the Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. You've got Puss in Boots. You've got um, all these characters coming through. So anyway, it was quite a ride, and one that I was really grateful to have this opportunity. Another fun project that I recently had, just sharing here, is a goalie mask for, well, now departed goalie Philip Grubauer. But he asked me to design his goalie mask, and it's cool. So that's the back side of it. And it was cool. We got to play in between their second and third period break. They always have local bands, so I got to perform with my band. I'm always in the back, so all they really got was a picture of my fingers plucking the bass on the jumbo screen, but that's okay. Just finishing up here. I know it's been a while, and I can keep going, but my music passion goes all the way back from when I was a kid. And so at one point, I met this guy, Bernie Worrell, was the keyboard player for Parliament Funkadelic, and he played my 50th birthday party a few years ago, and told me he'd like to collaborate with some of my concepts of blending native music with jazz and rock and funk style music. And so we got together and we recorded with them for a period of about 3 years. We created 4 triple LPs, and sort of he helped us define our sound. A lot of these incredible local musicians, Skerrick, saxophone player. It's our second album here. So this really brings together like the native storytelling, the indigenous language, the Tlingit and Haida. We also used Yupik language, very far north of Alaska. And a lot of these folks, over more than half, are native descent. And so this is kind of a fun moonlighting as a musician, as I like to say. But, in a lot of ways, it does give me another outlet for my creative inspiration, and so I'm always bolstering the band. We played the Airshot Jazz Festival. We got nominated for Concert of the Year, so well, fingers crossed on that one. Yeah, we played a club gig. So this is Bernie. Passed away in 2016. But his influence and his spirit kind of lives through our music, and he really inspired us and taught us a lot. I mean, that's the thing, is that he was such an amazing individual that gave us a lot of inspiration, and just there's something magic about having worked with him that is really incredible. And we learned and grew a lot through that process. So I used to say that we were the largest unknown band in the Northwest, but now maybe we're getting, with this new nomination, maybe we're going to get noticed. We're actually working on there's a documentary film it's finished and it's been submitted to SIF. So we'll see if it gets accepted, and if it does, that could be kind of a cool thing too. I say to it's anybody, I mean, I grew up in Seattle, so if you stick around in one town long enough, you're bound to get known for something, and I stand by that. I think this is the band as we are today. I had a video clip, but I'm gonna skip that and call it a night. And here's how you can kind of keep tabs on things that are going on. If you like to sign up or take note of social media, we post art openings and concerts and things that we're doing. So there we go. And now that I've told you everything, you probably have no questions. So it's like,
we have so many questions.
Yeah. If you have questions, I'm happy to take some questions. Yeah.
I mean, where to even
Start.
start?
I have a mythology question. So I know you've done a lot of work with Raven, obviously, and I'm kind of curious about trickster gods. And so a lot of times when I talk to people about indigenous trickster gods, they use Raven and Coyote interchangeably. But I'm curious to see whether you think there's a little bit of nuance there, that Raven and Coyote are actually distinctly different.
Well, it depends on the culture and the region. In the plains area, and where coyotes. Well, we have coyotes here too, but they have their own stories that refer to trickster uh, behavior and that kind of thing. And I'm not really well versed in that, but I've heard that they're very similar in the same way that Raven uh, has all these adventures, and he has this ability to change shape, assume different forms. That Coyote is similar in that way too. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious about process.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to? What you showed us tonight is so very different than the original baskets and that sort of stuff. Did you need to change your process of doing glass, or were you just growing on what you'd already known?
I mean, I think that at one point there was I was driven to try to make things, the cultural objects that in glass, even though they were made from basketry or made from a wood carving or bone carving or whatever, and I would try to replicate those. I would make a rattle, I would make a canoe paddle, I would make a basket or a hat, and all of these different things. And so, and then I don't know, I keep exploring just to keep it interesting. I don't feel comfortable making the same thing over and over. So, I mean, I do make baskets. I make plenty of baskets, but those are more um, entry level and sort of affordable, compared to the other things which take a lot more time and effort. If I'm lucky, I can make 60, 70 unique pieces a year. And that's about what I need to do to maintain my practice. As I have employees that help me. Uh, each piece. Everybody, yeah, often people will ask how much time goes into pieces, and it's so hard to answer. It could be anywhere from 10 to 40 or 50 hours, depending on the piece. Um, Working on different stages. You have blowing, you have the prepping, I have the designing and the drawing and the cutting and the stencil and the sandblasting and carving the designs into it, and so it's as my skills evolve, then I try more complex things, and that's just how I prefer to work. And it was Picasso has said that the worst thing an artist can do is to replicate himself over and over and over and over. So I guess I kind of learned from that statement. Yes.
It's people like you and Diane and Spooner who inspire me as an Indigenous artist to do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, what is it you think I could do to inspire and encourage the generation that is going to come after me?
Well, I think the main thing is it took a lot for me to commit to doing this, because I was playing music and I was blowing glass with my friends and having a jolly good time, and then when I had to dig really deep and really put in the hours to understand like how to design, how to make it look traditional, even though it's a non-traditional medium. Um, I get a lot. People are say, "Oh, you're so lucky you have this indigenous background." It's like, well, Also comes with a lot of work and a lot of hours going to every you know, practice and hours of practice. So I've been doing it really since full time since probably like 1998, and that has given me this platform, and people recognize that what I was doing was more personal than the work I was doing before, and there was something to it, so it sort of drew people in. But like my friend Garth said, uh, I asked him to come to Pilchuck at one point and do a talk for students, and he said, "Well, I'm assuming that like when I write a story, I'm inviting you into my world, and I'm showing you, I'm taking on this visual tour, through words, and then when so I'm guessing that when you make a piece of glass, you make a sculpture or a piece of art, you put it on a pedestal, you want people to sort of ask questions about it, right? So that's probably where the success is gonna bring you when you have a story behind what it is you're doing, and you can articulate it, and you can share that with people, because that will be, I mean, there's a story there, and everybody has a story. Um, we all have an individual story. We all have an interesting life, and so but it's how to bring that out and put it, in a visual form. So that's the challenge, and there's no easy way to tell you how to do this or that, but it's really up to the individual to find it. But those are some of the keys. Those are some of the tools I feel like, that it's good for people to hear, because if I told you to do X, ABC, it might not mean for you what it did for me. I grew up learning how to work with glass in a totally different era. Not many people, there wasn't a lot of great examples to look at. Now there's a lot of skilled glass blowers in the world, and you can learn from lots of different people, or you can pull up a YouTube and see like, oh, I want to, make a Venetian wine glass. I know people do that, and they study it and they practice it, and it's like a tutorial. So we didn't have that. We had to watch somebody do it and then try to mimic what they did. So I think it's just being broad-minded. It's being very open and finding good mentors and teachers and a good team. People who can support you and you support them. This glass community is all very co-supportive, and when you have that, it's a special thing.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes.
I'm interested in the intersection of whether you see intersections between the music. You were a musician. You started out first with music.
Yeah.
And then you went into the visual arts and fine art after that. Do you find that they intersect at times, or do you find that they're really two separate things?
Oh, well, I mean, for me, they do. Yeah. I mean, I'm, I music was my first love, and I thought that I would make it as a rock star. I wanted to be a rock star. That was my chosen profession, but it didn't really pan out for me, timing wise, and what have you. So, that this cultural art thing drew me in, and I realized I have this opportunity, and the people that I was meeting were encouraging me all the way. Native people, elders, teachers that I was learning from, and then at one point I thought I could do this with. I started going down to Santa Fe, and I saw native musicians, and they were doing native music in different forms, and I thought, well, I've never seen a native funk band. That could be cool, and so I thought, well, now I'll try to do that, and that will also give me. So I still have both. They both, you're having a bad day in the glass studio, you can always go like play music, or vice versa. If the music is too hard or not, giving opportunities, then I dig into my artwork. That's how it goes for me. Yes.
What's something that you're excited about in life or for yourself, whether glass related or not?
Well, I think well, the biggest thing is my wife is going to be leaving her corporate job, and we're going to start working together more. So, yeah, we met through Glass, and then she got a job when she came to Seattle, and so now she's kind of going to go back to her roots, and we're going to work together. That's a big change, and that's going to be really fun. And we have a opportunity to do a show at the National Nordic Museum in 2026. So we've been asked to do a two-person show. So in what world does that ever happen? Showcase your creative life together, which is really amazing. So this is something that we're gonna grab onto and just share it. So it's that's the next step for us. And beyond that, I don't know. Spend more. We're trying to develop some more opportunities in Alaska. So I invited another friend, a colleague, Alyssa London. She's working with me. She's also a Tlingit tribal member, and so she's now helping me think about developing new opportunities up there. So that's another thing. So that's the future.
Sweet.
Yep.
I just want to thank you, Preston.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for inaugurating this new series.
About what we're doing here in the Seattle space. If you want to sign up for workshops on the weekends, and we'll have these on these lectures on every Thursday. I'm sorry, once every Thursday.
Like this kid have vision.
Thank you for opening it up all year.